We are counting down the 15 best matches in WCW history, one match per week, for 15 straight weeks leading up to the anniversary of the final Nitro, which is coming up next month. And now we come to match number 9 from Starrcade, December 27th, 1993. From Independence Arena in Charlotte, North Carolina, Ric Flair against Vader for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship and Flair's career on the line. This match was not supposed to happen. You would think Starrcade is in Charlotte, so of course it's tailor-made for Ric Flair to win the title, but nope. The original plan was Sid Vicious beating Vader to win the championship. Vicious had either turned babyface or was about to turn babyface on TV leading up to this, but then he went and almost killed Arn Anderson with a pair of scissors and ended up getting fired. Flair, let's give a little bit of history here, had left WCW in 91. He had the beef with Jim Herd, so he left. He went to WWF. He became the champion. And when Vince McMahon started pushing him down the card, he went back to WCW. This was in February of 93 when he came back on TV. They gave him a talk show called A Flair for the Gold, which is best remembered for the the infamous debut of the Shockmaster. And when the Sid incident happened, which was October or November, might have been November, that opened the door for Flair to get the title shot against Vader. He wasn't Big Van Vader anymore. He had stopped using the full Big Van Vader name a few months before this. There was some kind of legal dispute, I think with New Japan maybe. They claimed ownership over the name. And so now by this point, he's just going as Vader, which doesn't sound quite as cool as Big Van Vader. And I'll tell you what, for a match that was thrown together kind of at the last minute, it has, to this day, one of the greatest builds to a championship match that I've ever seen. Before the match, we see Vader and Harley Race. They get to the building early, and Vader's in the ring, training and hitting the ropes and getting all amped up for the main event. The stuff with Flair, though, that's really what's awesome. They're in Charlotte. So Flair's home is not that far from the building. They sent a camera crew to his home to film him. Now, at the beginning of the podcast, at the beginning of the pay-per-view, Flair is still home. They have a camera crew showing him basically kissing his family and saying goodbye to his wife and kids. Mean Gene is there. We see a young Charlotte, a young David Flair. Remember him? No? Well, you're probably not alone. They played this up like Flair was like walking to the fucking electric chair. This was the last time his family would ever see him alive. That's how dominant a monster Vader was portrayed as being. Like, the closest thing to him today would be Brock Lesnar. There's just nothing even close to what Vader was back then. And it's like when Brock's music hits, something bad's about to go down. It was the same thing with Vader. Maybe not even so much the music, but once he was in the ring and he started throwing those punches and those forearms, you were done for. Like, you couldn't pay me enough money to take that kind of abuse. As great of a heel as Flair is, I know Flair, if Flair could be a heel for like his entire career, he would do it. Like, I'm sure Ric Flair being a heel now on TV, he's eating that shit up, okay? Because I don't know if hate is the right word, but I know he would much rather be the bad guy than be the good guy. It's just the role that he was born to play. So as good as he is at that, though, this was the greatest babyface performance, in my opinion, of his entire career. Not counting the time he came back on Nitro in 98 with the Horsemen when they reunited, and he cut that promo on Eric Bischoff. This was his best babyface performance of all time, here at Starrcade. He's speaking in a low tone when they interview him. This is not the usual, like, loud, bombastic Ric Flair that we're used to seeing. He's very reserved, very nervous. You could sense the anxiety in his voice. It's etched on his face. Mean Gene did his part to play things up also. He's very concerned for Rick. The camera follows the two of them into the limo as they talk some more on their way to the arena. I want somebody in WWE to strap Vince McMahon to a chair and tape his eyelids open and show this to him. Show this to him. This was tremendous stuff. So we get to the match. Flair's going for his 11th world title, depending on which championship history you believe. He vowed to retire if he did not win the title here. Okay, don't laugh. That's what he said. He vowed to retire. So Vader was just completely overpowering him early in the match. It was like a power display. Flair would chop him, it would have no effect. The story they were telling here is, Vader is this monster, and Flair just cannot find a way to beat this guy. This is his toughest challenge to date. All the guys he's ever wrestled, from Harley Race to Dusty Rhodes to Ricky Steamboat to Terry Funk to Sting, this is his biggest challenge. Vader hit him with a clothesline at one point. I think Flair was coming off the top rope, and Vader it was very awkward. Like, he hit him with a clothesline, and he busted Flair's mouth open. It looked like he knocked out a few of his teeth. Which reminds me, other than the mouth, Flair did not bleed during this match. He got a bloody mouth, but that was it. It was very unlike a big-time Ric Flair main event back then to not see him bleeding and to not see the white hair turn red. So I'm thinking this may have been a time when they were enforcing a no-blood policy. I know it was around then. WCW had some very weird policies. They went through phases like that, like you can't come off the top rope, or I think it was actually over the top rope. That's what it was. Over the top rope is a disqualification. I think that might have been a Jim Herd rule, which was so stupid because you had guys like Brian Pillman and Jushin Liger that they brought in. Like, they put these rules in place to actually limit what those guys could do, and these were high-flying guys. So now they got to worry, like, I can't come off the top rope, or I can't do this. It's just stupid. It was so dumb. But they went through periods where you couldn't bleed. I think actually Goldust. I think Dustin Rhodes got fired because he bled in a match on TV once, and they fired him. And I think that paved the way for him to come to WWF, and that was the birth of Goldust. So they went through phases like that. Harley Race got involved a few times in the match. The announcers played up the history between Flair and Race, and it was actually Flair who beat Race for the championship at the very first Starrcade back in '83. Tony Schiavone, I thought, was at his best here. Jesse Ventura was great. But Tony, in particular, was really, really good during this match. Flair was, he started working on Vader's knee, typical Flair match, softening him up for the figure four. He put the figure four on him. Vader got the ropes. Big moonsault attempt by Vader. Missed. Somebody sent me a tweet just yesterday. Who do I think is the best big man of all time, Vader or Bam Bam Bigelow? I'm going with Vader. Bam Bam was a talented guy, but you look at a 450-pound man doing a moonsault off the top rope when he doesn't have to, you find me a better big man than that. So Vader went for a moonsault. He missed. He splattered on the mat. Flair went for the pin. So Harley Race now is climbing to the top rope. And, Harley didn't move too fast in his prime, let alone here. But he climbs to the top rope, and Vader kicked out. I think Harley Race was probably supposed to break up the pin. He was too slow. So Vader kicked out. Flair moved. Race jumped off the top rope anyway, landed on Vader, quote unquote, accidentally, lands on his man. With a diving headbutt, which, as I said earlier, probably a move that's better off being retired at this point. Somehow this wasn't a disqualification. I don't think this was a no DQ match, and this happened in full view of the referee. So he let that go, even though Race basically landed on Vader. More chops by Flair. Hits the ropes. He runs into Vader. It's like running into a brick wall. Vader didn't move, but Flair did. He went down. But Vader is stunned. And what he does is Flair clips Vader's knee from behind. Vader sort of collapses to the mat. Flair pins him with a very sloppy-looking roll-up. Wins the match and the championship. It's kind of sad the match had to end like that because it really did look, from the chop block just to how the whole roll-up and everything, it looked very sloppy. But it doesn't drag the match down or anything like that. It didn't look that good, but the crowd popped huge when the referee counted 3. People jumped out of their seats. Pyro celebration. This was a great match. And if you watch to the end of the pay-per-view, I assume this is on the network version as well. That's not the version I watched. So I hope it's on the network version, but if you watch to the very end, Vader is backstage after the match. He's absolutely furious. Single-handedly just destroys an entire locker room. For some reason in Vader's dressing room, and also in Flair's when they went to him after, there's plastic covering all of the lockers. I don't know if they were planning a champagne celebration or what. This was never explained. Flair, they go to him. He's back there with his family. He's so emotional. You can barely hear what he's saying. He's talking so low. Again, very unlike Ric Flair. At one point, he turned around. He had to spit out some blood, which was nice. Mean Gene brings over Sting. to congratulate Flair, proving that Sting is an idiot and he never learns. Flair already turned on him once before this, and it would not be the last time that he would turn on Sting. But Sting has nothing but praise for him, and they bring over Ricky Steamboat to congratulate Flair. The two of them would end up feuding again for the championship the very next year. It's only a few months later that we got that Flair Steamboat match. I think it was at Spring Stampede, and then they had the rematch on TV. So they had one more little run left in them the following year. If you're going to watch this, don't just watch the match itself. Watch all of the segments that built up to it. Watch the post-match. I think it just adds to the whole thing. It adds to the realism of it. I know Flair had many more classic matches and moments in his career, and a lot of bad ones too. But if this would have been his last match, if he could have gone out winning the title at Starrcade, in Charlotte, slaying the monster, going out the hero, celebrating with his family, this would have been the perfect storybook ending to the career of Ric Flair. I mean, he was 45 years old here, almost 45, I think. I know he got the big send-off against Shawn at WrestleMania. He got the greatest retirement ceremony ever the next night. It's not a bad way to go out. I don't think he regrets going out that way. But I'm just saying, if he called it quits after this match and then gave up the title and just became an ambassador or a commissioner, or, kind of like what happened with Nick Bockwinkel, and just, this was it. This was his swan song. This is what people would remember him for. Instead of dressing up in drag and losing to Hulk Hogan in matches that he wasn't even involved in because Hogan didn't want to do a frickin' job, or getting buried in the desert. I think Russo had him buried in the desert, or being institutionalized. They made this guy eat a lot of shit when I think back to all the crap they put Ric Flair through, especially in those dying years of WCW. If you could just get rid of all that and just make this the end of his career, I'm just saying, that's a hell of a way to go out.